Hi friends, today I have come up with more real-time interview questions. I'm going to cover little more PaaS-based related questions, but it doesn't mean that only the cloud native architects or cloud native developers should look at. It is applicable for any type of Azure developer. It is always good to know all kind of features and all kind of questions. We never know what kind of questions comes in the interviews for any type of Azure developer or architect. So hence I suggest please go through this as well. Let us jump into the questions. First one, what is Service Fabric? So many guys doesn't know that Service Fabric is also one of the primary segment of Azure. If anyone asks you what are the three primary segments, definitely compute, storage, and Service Fabric is a third primary segment. So these are the three primary segments on the Azure. So coming to the third one, that is Service Fabric, you should little know about it as any type of Azure related guy. So Service Fabric is basically an open source distributed systems platform that makes it easy to package, deploy, and manage scalable and reliable microservices. This is basically built for the microservices. To give you more clarity on this, if you already know about Docker and container related technologies, this is very similar to that. So if you have any application, any microservices based application, if you have to deploy, usually you adapt Docker container based services model so that you can run on one particular Linux VM the number of containers, so that for example if you have 20 microservices, you can set it up 20 containers on your Linux VM, and then you can run all your 20 microservices on those different containers, so that you don't need to have 20 different VMs for each and every service, right? So that's how the container Docker container service model will help you to organize and orchestrate the containers with your microservices. Similarly, your Service Fabric also does help you to package, deploy, and manage your microservices. So it simplifies microservices deployment and development. So while you are developing and even while deploying, it will just simplifies your job. Supports both Windows and Linux with Docker images. So if you have a Docker images, it supports both Windows and Linux. Usually creating, running, and managing Dockers/containers and configuring Kubernetes is big hurdle. I need to configure host and node servers for Kubernetes, where Azure App Fabric is simple and straightforward and also saves a lot of time here to with the Service Fabric. So Service Fabric is an orchestrator. So in the case of a Docker container, you need to have a Kubernetes to orchestrate all your containers, and whenever one particular container is down, you should keep it up, and it also need to balance the load, so that all will be taken care by the Service Fabric mesh. So this is at a nutshell, but if you want to know a little more about it, please go through the architecture. If you want to build Service Fabric based microservices, you simply need to go to your Visual Studio, and here you can type Service Fabric. You can see here Service Fabric based application. Just simply click on next, and then it will show you the different types of Service Fabric applications. One of the other advantages with the Service Fabric is it supports both stateless and stateful. So if you want to build your service with the state, you can go ahead with this one. If you want to build with a stateless, you can go with this. So there are plenty of options available. You can choose hosted containers and applications, guest executable, container based, run a container image that exists in a registry. So you can go ahead and start building it, and you will be able to even directly deploy it to the Azure App Fabric or Service Fabric on the Azure cloud. So coming back to our topic, what is the next question? So what is Service Fabric mesh? So there is Service Fabric where you will be able to deploy, manage your app microservices, but there are plenty of things need to be taken care. One is high availability of your microservices, disaster recovery, clustering, all those things. So if it has to be managed, you have to have a plan and you need to manage everything. But if you use Service Fabric mesh, that will be managed by Azure. App Services Fabric Mesh is a fully managed service that enables developers to deploy microservices applications without managing virtual machine, storage, or networking. Applications hosted on Service Fabric Mesh run and scale without you worrying about the infrastructure powering it. So that's a major advantage with the Service Fabric Mesh. So Service Fabric Mesh consists of clusters of thousands of machines. A cluster operations are hidden from the developer. You don't need to worry about all those operations which are going under the cluster. Upload your code and specify the resources you need, availability requirements and resource limit. Service Fabric Mesh automatically allocates the infrastructure and handles infrastructure failures, making sure your applications are highly available. You only need to take care about the health and responsiveness of your application, not the infrastructure. So that's a major advantage as we discussed. So everything is managed by the Service Fabric Mesh. But Service Fabric actually offers 3 different ways to deploy your microservices. One is Service Fabric Mesh, Service Fabric Cluster, Service Fabric Standalone. You can check the pricing models and the way you are going to deal or manage, and you can decide which one will be the best for you to deploy to the cloud. So Service Fabric Mesh applications are described by the resource model. Again, there is one more thing called Service Fabric native applications are described by the native application model. There are 2 different type of applications, and Service Fabric native applications doesn't run on the Service Fabric Mesh. You should go in the different route. That's why you should understand a lot on the Service Fabric if you really want to get into the topics. But at a nutshell, at least you check how to deploy your microservices to the Service Fabric. And there are many concepts internally, like how to manage the stateful or stateless, or how there are few concepts about the service discoveries. So all those things you need to come up. Probably I'll try to make a video on the Service Fabric. I'll see like how I can make it simplified. But yeah, until that, just at least know that there are 3 segments. One is Service Fabric. Under that, you will be able to deploy, manage, orchestrate your microservices. So that you understand, and let us jump to the next step. So your customer is planning to migrating his monolithic application to microservices architecture. What do you recommend? So if you are a cloud native developer or cloud native architect, then this question must be coming, and this is one of the major requirements from the various customers. Their applications might have built like few years ago, maybe 10-15 years ago, and they might have built it monolithic based architecture. Now they realized they want to simply upgrade the systems. Then what will you suggest? One of the best thing is like microservices. So if you have to do it, if you have to migrate to the microservices, definitely either you need to adapt Service Fabric on the Azure, or you have to go with some Docker container regular technology. So you need to set up all the Docker containers. Again, Kubernetes will come into the picture, and there are a lot of technologies, and the simplest way is Service Fabric. Under the Service Fabric, like what all you want to suggest? The complete architecture is one set of the requirement, and what all you recommend under that. So based on complete requirement, like their existing system, you need to decide what need to go where. For example, if they have one huge service, first you need to start splitting into the number of services, because microservice under the microservices, each service is a standalone application, and it will run individually and independently. It doesn't relate to the other services. It doesn't impact to the other services. That's how usually the microservices work, right? So you need to decide first. You need to have a huge plan, and you need to decide which service, how many services you are going to divide, and how they are going to be independent to each other. When they are getting independent, you may need to maintain the local small database for each service. So what type of storage you need to use, whether it is a table storage, blob storage, or some MySQL storage, what is that you are going to use. And you need to communicate between the microservices. For example, you are building a retail based application, you got a online order to the retail system. So when it receives the order to one particular microservice, then this need to send to the Another service that I received an order, which is like maybe shipping or back office service. So there is a communication between the services, service to service, and for that you need to manage some kind of service bus. So you can have a look at storage queue, or you can also check Azure service bus. So there are plenty of options again. Now you may need to maintain the cache also for the better performance. Rather than storing it in the permanent storage, you will take the persistent storage and store it, right? So that is where Azure Cache Redis will come. And the centralized database has to be there. What is that database is going to be, whether it is a SQL Server or Azure SQL database, or you're going to adapt some MongoDB or Cosmos DB from the Azure. So you need to come up with different options. It is completely dependent on the requirement. So based on the requirement, you can explain to the interviewer that first we'll decide what kind of services or how many services you are going to divide, and then what kind of database we are going to use as a local database for each service, and also the centralized database. Also, like what is the communication channel you are going to build, what kind of service bus you are going to build, and storage queue, how you will maintain the queuing system between while you're passing the messages between the services, and even check how the service discovery will work, how the authentication model will work between the services. So microservices can communicate either through the HTTP like a RESTful service, or it also can go through the just simple messaging system like service bus. So while you're passing, you need to send some kind of authentication. How will you maintain the centralized authentication? So all those things will come up. So you need to speak well about that. So definitely this is one of the important questions for a cloud native architect or cloud native developer. So for the other guys, like if you are applying for the admin, probably it is best to know like what is service fabric. Let us jump into the next topic. Is it possible to configure VNet for app services? This is for everyone, just not for PaaS. Though app services is managed service, everyone should know about this. So definitely, this is just to understand whether you know well about the app services. So you will be able to configure the VNet for the app services by using app service environment. Not directly you can configure under the app services, but there is something called app service environment. You can search it in the Azure, you will get it app service environment. Under the app service environment, you will be able to select your virtual network so that it will become private net or private cloud, right? So that's how you can configure. Moving to the next question, is it possible to configure load balancer on app service? Yeah, this is again to understand whether you know well about app services, because app services is manageable, it is scalable. Why you need to worry about again load balancing, right? It will be automatically scaling up. But sometimes you need to worry about balancing the load if you are managing two different app services, one in region A and the other one in the region B or somewhere, right? So in that case, definitely you need to set the load balancer. Then it is also possible to set the load balancer for the app services. So there is one option called ILB, internal load balancer. So in the picture you can see that by using in the picture I'm showing the application gateway, that is the second option. So by using application gateway, because application gateway supports HTTP based traffic routing, so that will perfectly work. So traffic manager, Azure Traffic Manager usually used for balancing the load between two different regions, whereas application gateway is based on the HTTP, so it will very well work on the app service, because at the end of the day you will get the endpoint from the app services, so you use it and configure that. The other way is like internal load balancer. Under the app service environment you will get this option again. Okay, so you can have a look at app service environment. That will be really good for the app services related topics. No one will ask you what is app service. So because the expectation from the interview is like that you already know app services well about it, so they are going to test your knowledge on app services, like by going in deeper and asking about load balancing, internal load balancing, or like whether you will be able to set the VNet kind of things. So let us get into the next one. What are the different service plans available for app services? Yeah, this is one of the important question. Because first they will understand whether you know the different plans available on the app services, then they will jump into one of them. So you have 6 different plans. Use, like if you check 2 years ago or 1.5 2 years ago, only there were 5 plans, or I think 4 plans, but later they started adding more and more. So free is a first option. You will be able to launch 10 web applications and they will give you 1 GB disk. Whereas shared dev test, it is really good for the dev test type of environments, but it is shared environment and you will be able to launch 100 web applications under the 1 GB space. They will only give you the 1 GB disk space. Basic, they will give you dedicated environment for dev and test environment, and it is suitable for the dev and test. Unlimited web, there is no limit for the number of web applications, and 10 GB is the maximum disk space they usually give for the basic. Maximum 3 instances, VM instances are configured under the basic, and whereas standard, it is good for the production loads, and unlimited for web. 50 GB is a hard disk space, and they will launch 10 maximum instances under the 10 VM instances they will launch under this. That is up to 10 instances. VPN hybrid connectivity is supported, whereas for the other plans there is no VPN hybrid connectivity. Coming to the premium, again enhanced for the performance and scale, and it is again recommended for the production. Unlimited web, 250 GB hard disk, maximum 30 instances will be launched under this. VPN hybrid connectivity is supported. So if you want to get more security and more isolation to your environment, then this is one of the option delivered by the Microsoft Azure just 1.5 year ago or 1 year ago. So this will help you to isolate your complete environment from the regular application launching. So it will it is recommended for the high performance, security and isolation. Unlimited web, 1 TB disk space you are getting. It's a huge to launch any number of applications. Usually you don't use this app service space for the images, media files. You only use this for launching your web application related files or code, right? So for the images and media files related stuff, you will usually go with the storage, regular storage, blob storage and other storages. So it will give you maximum 100 instances. VPN hybrid connectivity and network isolation is supported with the isolated. So this is at the top level of these plans. So they may ask you like if I want to isolate my environment, what is the plan I can use it under the app services? Then you can answer like isolated and what all it does. If you don't know what is app service is a managed service which is useful to deploy your web applications. Even you can deploy your web services if you want. It is completely managed in terms of the security, scalability, disaster recovery and backups. Everything is taken care by the Microsoft. So coming to the next question, what are the limitations of the app services? So the major limitations are you can't remotely access those machines and no third-party installations possible. If you want to install some third-party plugins which you want to or which your application is supporting, you have to maximum utilize whatever it is given by them, but you can't run your background services or service agents kind of thing. Maximum disk space is 1 TB, and beyond that, if you want to, you have to again go in the other route. So coming to the no third-party installations, there is something called site extensions. Under the site extensions, you will be able to add different type of plugins, but not the service agents. But if you want something like to run the cron jobs type of thing, definitely there is web jobs under the app services. You will be able to run those things. Okay, you can run webhooks and all those stuff. Coming to the next question, what are the different applications supported by the app services? So there are 3 different type of applications supported. Web apps to build and deploy web apps faster at scale. It is very fast deployment channel. It's not like usual way. It's just like that you can deploy from your Visual Studio also directly. Web apps for containers. It also supports web apps for containers. Containerized web apps, if you have, you can easily deploy those. API apps, you can also deploy your API apps to the app service. Coming to the next one, when do you use Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and Web Jobs? These are all again managed services or PaaS based or serverless architecture based functionalities. So coming to the Azure Functions, it is purely the serverless architecture or serverless functions. If you want to run the logic without running any server from your end, you can simply write your logic and just execute it under the Azure Functions. You will be charged only for the number of runs, not like how much time you are spending or how much computing you are using. So it is purely based on the number of runs you are executing that particular Azure function you are launching on it. So it allows developers to take action by connecting to data sources or messaging solutions. So there are different type of triggers, HTTP based triggers, schedule based triggers. So you can utilize them and you can run this. For example, assume that you are getting images onto your storage. Whenever the image is coming to your storage, you want to write a trigger and you want to create thumbnail type of image for that particular image. So you can write a Azure function to monitor whenever that storage triggers, it will just create another thumbnail image from the top of it, and then it will store back in your storage. That's how you can create it. That is one of the example. There are plenty of things, plenty of similar cases where you can use it. Serverless logic execution and trigger based. Coming to the logic apps, if you want to perform some kind of sequential automated steps, then you can use logic apps. Assume that there is an expense approval process in your organization. Now when the employee submits the expense, then you should follow certain steps that should go to the maybe manager 1, then if he approves it goes to manager 2, then final approval, right? Financial manager approval. But your management took a decision that if it is less than $50, it should be automatically approved. It doesn't need to come to me. So then in that case, you can write the conditions and you can write the complete flow there, automated flow, so that whenever that expense comes with less than $50, it will automatically go off. If it is less than $100, more than $50 and less than $100, it goes to the manager 1, then manager 2, manager 3. Assume that there is another logic like between 50 to 100, it need not go to even manager 2, it should directly go to the financial manager. So you can write all those type of flow based steps, automated steps, and the UI based steps. You don't need to write a logic there, simply drag and drop kind of functionality. That all you can configure it under the logic apps. There are a lot of cases. For example, in SharePoint, you are uploading a document. Usually there is approval process, but based on the type of document, you want to ignore the approval or automatic approvals you want to provide. So all those type of things you can write it under the logic apps. This is basically for the automating the tasks. Coming to the web jobs. So web jobs are used to schedule a job to be executed based on the schedules. Assume that you are monitoring a third-party system for certain data, or user A data is coming to that particular third-party website. You need to continuously monitor, and whenever the data comes, then you need to pull the data to the your database. So in this case, either you can regularly monitor, or you can also schedule a job, maybe every day or every 15 days. Every 15 minutes, you want to schedule a job to check the data for your relevant user information. So those cases you can schedule it under the web jobs. So it will run those jobs. Like it is very similar to your earlier cron jobs. Now all those cron jobs also can be run under the web jobs. So image processing or other CPU intensive type of work, queue processing, file maintenance such as aggregating or cleaning up log files in the regular intervals, all those things can be done under the web jobs. So this is again a PaaS based because these are all managed services. Web jobs usually run under the app services. It's not an independent option. It is there under the app services. Okay, let us jump into the other one. What are the limitations of Azure Functions? Just at least remember few of the limitations, not every limitation. Maybe like maximum instances which can run under that. And the beauty of the Azure Functions is like there is no limit to run the number of concurrent Azure function executions in a minute kind of limitations. So that's a beautiful beauty of the Azure Functions. You can run any number of Azure functions concurrently. Okay. Whereas I think AWS Lambda has such kind of limitations. Here it doesn't. So you can just remember like what's the maximum time duration or timeout duration, ACU per instance, maximum request URL length. So all those things, like maybe maximum request size is one of the limitations which you need to remember, like 100 MB, sorry. And maximum request URL length can be 8192 characters under the consumption plan and all the other plans. Okay, app service plans, you will get 100 per region here, 100 per resource group, 100 per resource group here under the app service plan. So there are variety of things. Please go through them. Just at least remember 2-3 different limitations so that you will be able to answer these. Differences between Azure Migrate and Azure Site Recovery. So this is one of the most frequently asked question, because Azure Site Recovery was only the option until 1.5 year ago to migrate any your on-premises data loads to the cloud. But later Azure Migrate is introduced and it got plenty of options, and it has a beautiful navigation and step-by-step assessment discovery kind of channels. So coming to the Azure Migrate, Azure Site Recovery is underlying architecture for Azure Migrate. Azure Migrate is dedicated to migrating servers, VDA, database, web apps. So coming to the Azure Site Recovery is mainly for setting up cross-region replicas and to address disaster recovery, allows to enable replication for VMware, physical machine, Hyper-V and all those. Azure Migrate have sequential steps to perform discovery, assess, migration and test. Now Azure Site Recovery still can be used if you want to move the on-premises loads to the cloud. You can still prefer one VM or a couple of VMs if you have, but I personally recommend, even Microsoft recommends Microsoft Azure Migrate to migrate any type of workloads from on-premises to the cloud, even including database, web apps, or you have a data center and you want to move it. Azure Site Recovery you can use for the backups or creating a replicas of VMware physical machines, or even if you want to have a failover mechanism. For example, if you have configured your complete data center on region 1 and then you want to be ready with the failover mechanism in the region 2, but you don't want to up the servers, but at least you want to create a replicas and keep it ready, the whole system. Whenever the fail occurs on the region A, then you want to just simply pick it up, or you want to just fail over to the region B. So that kind of configurations you can do it under the Azure Site Recovery. So let us go for the next one. That's it for today. I'll come up with more questions. Thanks for watching my videos.